Welcome to the 2025 DTF Printing Trends and Insights Strategies for Growth and Profitability webinar. I'm Adrienne Palmer, Editor-in-Chief of DTF Printing and DTF Expo. I'm here with two industry experts from Keypoint Intelligence, Johnny Schell, Principal Analyst, and David Sweetnam, Director of Research and Lab Services. Keypoint Intelligence is a global data and market intelligence source for the digital imaging industry. The research company provides test-based analytical information, competitive intelligence, and sales enablement. In today's webinar, we will focus on growth, profitability, and the future of DTF printing in 2025. There will be a live Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Please use the comments or the chat section for any questions you may have. We have a lot to cover, so let's get started. Hi, Johnny. Hi, David. Great to see you.
Hi, Adrienne.
Okay, first question, and this may be a big one as we start the year off. What are the biggest trends you're seeing in DTF printing right now?
I think two of the biggest trends, at least from my perspective, in DTF printing, automation is gaining lots of momentum. In terms of post-print processing, cutting, onboard maintenance of the printing equipment. So all this stuff is becoming more and more automated. That helps streamline the workflow for the end users. And I think another big trend I'm seeing is just the wide range of different applications that DTF is entering into. We're seeing expanded gamut ink sets come out. We're seeing neon colors. We're seeing a variety of different effect films with holographic patterns and foiling techniques and things like that embedded into the films. So that's all exciting, and I'll leave it there and let David comment on what he's seeing in the trends.
Yeah, well, as Johnny said, robotics and how automation can help is becoming more important as more and more vendors are coming out with 4, 8, heads, and the human stage is starting to become the bottleneck for many people in terms of getting the most out of their DTF equipment. So people are looking at ways of keeping up with the speed at which these machines can now actually print output. So, robotics and automation is a key way of helping companies keep up. And there are, as you say, as more and more people are buying larger volume equipment, we're also seeing more channel partners have as a business model selling the printed film rather than just being a final decorated apparel supplier. So that comes back to the whole thing with post-process cutting, ordering, and fulfillment as well.
Great. Yeah, the different effects, very exciting to see that technology progress. And then automation, I feel like, we say that every year, but it is really important. And especially as this technology changes and a lot of our lives and the industry and personal, everyone wants to be automated in some way, especially issues with labor and that bottleneck. Everyone always there's always a bottleneck somewhere. And if you can figure out a way to streamline it, it's a great tool. Yeah. So how has the DTF printing landscape evolved over the past year? And I know we're still in the infancy, we're just a couple years in, so how has it changed just over this past year? And what do you expect to change in the near future?
Yeah, so David touched on it in his point in the previous question, but faster printers, more print heads, more colors. We're seeing not only wider printers, but also to attract that small business end of the spectrum for the Etsy and the original goods market, if you will. We're seeing smaller tabletop and desktop DTF printers come to market. That helps these small businesses adopt the technology and provide solutions to their customers, either through an Etsy shop or even, Amazon Marketplace, what have you. And then kind of tying back in with the whole technological innovations with printers, the whole workflow is being improved with pretty much end-to-end end-line processing. So printing, powder coating, curing, and then onto a cutter where everything is pretty much automated from beginning to end. And really the only operator intervention is to sort the transfers once they come off the cutter, maybe a little bit of printer maintenance, those kind of things. But that's kind of what I'm seeing in terms of how the landscape has evolved.
Yeah, I think we're also seeing that the whole pitch around DTF is changing. A couple of years ago, it was, I've got DTF, that's my differentiator. Whereas a lot of people have now got DTF. So they're now having to find new ways of differentiating their hardware versus the other hardware on the marketplace. And again, with these fast machines coming out, there's going to become more of a race to the bottom in terms of pricing. So, if you don't want to be competing against the massive companies thumping out T-shirts, by the thousand, and you want to sort of provide a high quality, higher value, customized piece, you need to be looking at what solutions are going to give you the ability to differentiate yourself on the end product and not just on the end price. That's where it goes back to the whole a wider range of decorated films, wider range of ink sets, wider range of creative options for the RIP. All of those are going to help that smaller Etsy type business differentiate themselves and be able to command a high ticket price for their goods and not have to compete against the sell them low, sell them in big volume kind of business model.
Right. Yeah. No one ever wants that race to the bottom. And it is so interesting in this apparel space in general. We do have that smaller market, people who are working from their homes, their garages, selling onto Etsy. And then we have really big corporations. I mean, I know a lot of printers are calling themselves like tech companies, and they're bringing on 16 DTF printers, and they're pumping out stuff at a much higher rate than someone who is doing this in their house for the local school or something like that. So it's such a big range of what we're talking about anyway. And so that's what I think I've seen that too. I think when I first started covering this space, I was learning more about the makers and the smaller companies. And then once you really get into it, it's like, oh, wow, this is running on a very large scale. And, why wouldn't it?
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
So what technological advancements should DTF printers be aware of coming into this year?
Well, we touched on it earlier. I think automation is something that is front and center with almost all the DTF vendors out there. And that will continue to progress. Really, DTF is kind of driving a lot of the automation that we're seeing in apparel decoration right now. I know we're going to talk about the Impressions Expo shortly, but there was quite a bit of automation there in terms of fully automated DTF transfer machines where the transfer is loaded, heat pressed, the film is peeled, a robotic arm takes the decorated garment off the press. So I think we're gonna continue to see automation develop, and that's something that DTF printers should be aware of and try to adopt as quickly as possible. We're also seeing albeit not ready yet, the powderless movement seems to be gaining momentum. We know Cobra Flex was the first powderless company out of the gate a few years ago. Unfortunately, that didn't work out too well, but we're seeing a lot of R&D, especially in China, on powderless solution. And it eventually, I think, will get to where it needs to be, but it's something that the DTF printers out there should definitely keep their eye on. And then the third thing, I'll finish after this, one of the negative aspects of DTF printing is this whole sustainability movement that has gained a lot of momentum over the last few years, but is really starting to get some traction now. And then here comes DTF printing with the PET film, and so we're actually generating not sustainable waste. So we're seeing some paper media come to market, whereby instead of using a plastic film, you print onto the paper. It's a semi-transparent, so you can still see the transfer through the paper to align it properly on the garment. And so I think that's a definite step in the right direction, and DTF printers should be aware of that as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the sustainability topic is so tough because if, we're sustainable in one way, as in we're not printing 300 shirts that we're only two people are going to wear.
Right.
Yes, there's sustainability in that with having that excess waste. But, we're looking at that paper versus PET. That's problematic. So I do agree, we're still working through things. And I think that there will be definitely big changes in that space as more and more people find that to be very important. And yeah, the powderless, I've been hearing that for a while from a few different companies. I'm excited to see, when that will come, especially there are a lot of conversations about health and safety with DTF printing. So I think that, would hopefully eliminate any issues there. But yeah, waiting to see. David, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that a lot of buyers, I think, are starting to look more holistically about DTF as well. A couple of years ago, it was just the mindset was focused on which printer do we need to buy. The printer was it. Whereas I think people have now gone for the pain points of having bad batches of film or bad ink or bad powder or bad blanks. And people are starting to realize that it's not just a good printer. You need to have good accessories to go with it, So we're having more conversations and more points of contact with companies promoting the fact that their inks are a better fit or their powders are a better fit or their film manufacturing process is much more consistent, and these are factors that they want us to try and help them with to help them differentiate from, the lower priced options, because I think a lot of buyers don't still necessarily know what the difference is between buying a roll of film for, X amount of money versus buying it for Y amount of money, and what are the realistic consequences of going down the cheaper route. Is it effectively a saving, or does it mean you're throwing a much large percentage of your product away or ending up with more upset customers who don't end up being repeat business, and in your cost of acquiring a customer is going up and up and up?
Right. So true. I think that, it's very easy sometimes to just say, oh, that's really cheap. Let me go that route. But even on, the consumer end, you buy something really cheap online, it comes in and you're like, okay, well, that's why I got it for $6.99. It's going to fall apart here soon. It's the same with film. And if you're looking for that quality and wanting to, have a high customer retention rate, you really do need to focus on quality of product. And sometimes that's going to cost a little bit more.
Yeah.
Any other tech advancements we can look forward to this year?
I mean, one thing I'll add to the discussion here is not really a technological advancements, but the Japanese competition is really starting to grow. We've seen many of the blue chip brands enter the market over the last 18 months or so. Mamaki, Roland, Epson, the most recent one. Brother's been around in the DTF market probably the longest, but very similar to the early days of DTG. If you remember back, you were much younger then, Adrienne, but when DTG first hit the market, late 1990s, early 2000s, there were a lot of Chinese machines on the market. They weren't very reliable. The tech support was non-existent. And it wasn't really until some of these blue chip brands came into the DTG market, Epson, Brother, some of the others, Cornette, obviously, that really legitimacy was brought to DTG printing. And that's when we started to see large advancements in technological, advancements, better inks. White ink came along. It was terrible at the beginning, but then the white inks got better. The pre-treatments have gotten better. And so over time now, we're 25 years in. DTG is a relatively stable process as long as all the variables are controlled. DTF's only been around since 2018, 2019. So we're only 5 or 6 years in, and there's still plenty of room to grow. And I think with these Japanese brands entering the DTF market over the last several years, we're going to see DTF further develop, further expand, further advance, and become more of a legitimate technology choice for the end users.
Sure. And I do think it is important to see some of these brands that people are aware of, when the first purchasing issues, purchasing overseas and not getting that customer reliability. The conversations, are happening in the middle of the night versus you can just call someone up here stateside. You have that reliability and understanding because those companies have provided value in the past to their customers. So you see their names, you're like, okay. And also they all have connections to wide format digital print, which we know is, there's that connection there to DTF. So it's a trusted source for you for sure.
Yep.
Right. So Johnny, you did mention that, I saw you on the show floor, but we didn't ever get a chance to catch up. It's like the shows are always so crazy. You're running here, there, always late. At least I'm always late to, every appointment, everything. It's just so much to see and do. So I saw you from afar, but didn't get to chat. What was your main takeaway from attending Impressions Expo Long Beach just last month? And David, we can start with you.
There were quite a few, innovations. There wasn't as much new hardware as I was expecting, but one of the things that jumped out at me was the whole model around allowing for upgrades in capabilities of devices in the field and, providing them with further business expansion on the Printomize. So Printomize's new range that they were launching at the show, you could start off with a 2-head system, and then if your needs went further upstream, you could keep the same machine and then just add another head onto the print head array. Same thing, they had a 4-head machine which you could put another head on top to make it a 5. So we've seen this in production print for many years. We're seeing it more in the office space now, where vendors are looking to future-proof some of these hardware investment by giving them something potentially at a more cost-affordable starting point, where they may have a lower business model and they have a lower ability to justify a capital spend. But then as they build their business, they've got a larger customer base, or their customer base is asking for new capabilities, rather than having to switch out the equipment you've already got and part exchange it for new equipment. You can now actually just add extra functionality to the equipment you've already got in-house, which I'm expecting to see other vendors maybe go down that path as well. So that was something interesting I saw. Johnny?
Yeah, a few things I just noticed in general about Impressions. First of all, as David mentioned, I expected to see quite a bit more hardware, certainly more Chinese vendors, and I was kind of surprised that there weren't more Chinese vendors on the floor. There was maybe, 6, 7 at most. It was the Chinese New Year, so that may have had some effect on that. And the booths were smaller. Many of the major brands, Corny comes to mind. M&R was as big, but they had, I think, a little less equipment. They didn't bring the Polaris this year. And then, like we touched on earlier, just a lot of automation, especially with DTF. There was just a lot of different ways to automate the workflow. Everything from, like I mentioned before, these automated maintenance type machines where they have maintenance routines already built in to do nozzle checks and head alignment and things like that. But also with just material handling, everything from flatbed cutters. Roland's new printer, the TY300, has onboard cutting and perforating, so that was kind of something new. Epson also with their new G6070 with onboard maintenance and monitoring of the print system. And then we saw a lot of automated heat transfer, DTF heat transfer machines. ROC and SPSI come to mind there. And I think we're going to touch on that in the next question, so I'll hold off there, so not to give away too much.
Yeah, well, no, go right into it. Yeah, if there were any standout DTF printing equipment showcased, and you just mentioned ROC and the Impress, if you want to start there, and what other equipment you saw on the show floor.
Yeah, so ROC probably had the most interesting machine with the ROC Impress, and this is a carousel machine that has a robotic automated placement of the transfer onto the blank garment. 2 heat press stations. The first one is just a 6-second heat press. The second was had a piece of cloth beneath the heat platen, so to actually give a little texture to the transfer to make it more soft and hand feel. Then an automatic robotic depeeler, they call it, that actually pulls the film off of the decorated shirt. Another heat press, and then finally a robotic arm that pulls the shirt off. SPSI showed the Columbia system, very similar to the Rock Impress, with robotic loading of the transfer onto the garment, heat pressing. They had the automatic depeeler. I don't think they had a robotic arm to remove the shirt, but this is the kind of automation that we're seeing as well. And I'll turn it over to David because he was really keen on the Printomize, the Hyper series, with what you can do with that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the robotic system I saw recently, it wasn't actually at the ISS show, it was at the big C-Print show in Lyon that I was at last week. And that system actually has a single robotic arm, and you have compartments with each letter and each number, and you could also have a company logo. And they were demonstrating, had a flood of people around them all day, and you could actually see this robot personalizing T-shirts on the go. So you could literally go up, say, right, David, number 7, and then the robot would then go and you load the polyester T-shirt on the platen. The robot arm would then go and pick up a big number 7, a DAV ID, place them perfectly on the T-shirt. A platen would come across, heat press, and then you're unloaded. So it was a really cool way of providing, perfectly aligned personalization of garments. So that was pretty interesting. And I had a good chat with the CEO of the company. And while he was actually demonstrating HTV as the film, he said there's no reason why you couldn't do it with DTF as well. He was obviously doing it with HTV because he was doing it on polyester T-shirts. So that's why he was demoing that. But that was another really cool innovation I saw at a recent trade show.
I'll just mention too the Epson, the new 6070. They showed a prototype at Printing United back in October in Las Vegas, and then Roland with their new TY300. Those were probably two printers on the floor that got a lot of attention. I mentioned Roland's machine has an onboard cutter perforator, so that makes it easier once the film is through the curing oven, after powdering and everything. You simply just tear all the transfers apart and they could be sorted. So, and then of course Epson, it's a big blue chip name that everybody recognizes. And so now you know that DTF is a legitimate technology that has a lot of horsepower behind it.
Right. And I mentioned, wide format digital print companies coming into this space as well. But we're also, as you mentioned, Rock, a traditional screen printing manufacturer now being involved, maybe not so much on the actual digital print side of it, but with heat transfers. So definitely seeing more people get into the game. I guess I have two questions here. David, and you're in Barcelona now, you were at C-Print last week. Are you seeing any major differences between America and Europe in terms of DTF advancements?
I think the trend towards the larger 1.6 meter machines is more driven by the US market than it is in the European market. So, I know that Mamaki have come out with the 1.6 meter version of the TXF 300. I don't believe the Mamaki European team are even taking that device because they don't see the same potential drive to have that bigger unit, because it does require a lot of foot space. It's not just the printer, but the size of the oven that is needed to drive that kind of machine it's pretty formidably big. So a lot of European operations that are working on a smaller footprint are simply going for smaller machines that maybe are more flexible and are less cost sensitive when it comes to taking up valuable floor space in the print shop. So that's one thing that we see as a difference.
Okay, interesting. And then just because we are talking about it, do you think that there is any saturation of the market happening right now that everybody is kind of getting their foot in the door? I feel like I've seen, maybe impressions, you didn't seem like the booths were as big, or maybe there weren't as many Chinese manufacturers, but I do believe, at Printing United in the apparel space and at this show, everyone is trying to say DTF in some way at their booth and at their company. And do you think that like, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing?
I think the picture's changing. You know, I mean, a couple of years ago, everyone was just saying, I've got DTF. It's got 2 heads. It can do 8 square meters per hour, 10 square meters per hour, CMYK or whatever. And that's no longer going to make you differentiate because everybody's got that. You know, everyone's talking the technology game now, whether it's the fact you've got automated nozzle checking capability, or you've got better control of the film as it's going through the system, or you've got better control of the powdering or the recycling of the powder, or whatever it may be. There's a much bigger technology argument and technology discussion that vendors now using to differentiate themselves. And again, you'd expect that of the blue chip Japanese companies, but the Chinese companies are also doing as well. You know, whether it's talking about the fact they've got built-in HEPA filters on their ovens, so you know they don't have to have external ventilation, which obviously is an additional expense for a print shop. You know, so that those are all becoming more important and more commonly seen on the trade show floor.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, Adrienne, the market is not saturated yet, but it is getting to a point where I think there's going to be a contraction on the vendor side. Just like in the early days of DTG, where originally there was all these Chinese vendors that were offering DTG. Once the blue chip brands kind of entered the market, a lot of those Chinese brands just couldn't exist in such a competitive market. So I think we're going to see something very similar in the DTF market over the next several years as Epson, Brother, Roland, Mamaki all gain momentum with their R&D efforts and with their technological advancements and so on and so forth. In our most recent DTF forecast, we do still forecast growth through 2028. I think the CAGR is double digit. I want to say around 12, 13% CAGR, which is very good. But I do expect over time, over the next few years, that the end user market will also become somewhat saturated. We've already talked about everybody has DTF, and now the differentiator is you have more capacity, you have special effect films or something to that nature, or you're more sustainable because you're using some of the new papers, things like that. So it is going to become more of a challenge for all these DTF printers to coexist. And really what differentiates you is speed, price, and quality. That's really going to be it. So if you can capitalize on all the 3 of those, you should come out, close to the top anyway.
Right. No, great feedback. And I think we've seen that with wide format. We've seen that with screen printing. Yeah. Those are the 3 things that everyone is looking for anyway. So yeah.
I was going to add too, you mentioned, a traditional screen printing company, has entered the DTF market. They've been in the DTG market before. And I think these companies have finally realized that digital is not a competitor. It's complementary, right? All these things have to coexist together to help the end users be more competitive in their own market segments, right? And so you can't look at one thing as a competitor to the other. It's just a tool in the toolbox, right? A carpenter doesn't build a house using just a hammer. He has to have a saw and all these other tools. And it's the same really for the print service providers. The more tools you have in your toolbox, then the more customers you're able to serve.
Absolutely. Yeah. Trying to be that one-stop shop. And I've always said it's an addition. And yeah, great feedback. Okay. So if someone is purchasing new or purchasing for the first time, and as we know with digital print technology, every couple of years, you're probably going to have to be buying new or doing some of these upgrades. And David, as you mentioned, what features or innovations should they be looking for?
Technology that helps you keep the machine up as much as possible, because again, DTF machines still have quite a lot of downtime compared to some other technologies like screen. So something that can help keep the machine productive as much as physically possible, reduce your failure rate on garments, because again, whether it's a cost reduction or whether it's a sustainability issue, if you want to message your sustainability credentials, there's nothing better than being able to say, I have no waste garments, because garment production is one of the biggest non-green elements of the whole process. So if you can say that I'm not throwing away any garments in my process because I'm super efficient, that's a great green message for people. And I think that's an important area for people to look at. Another area is AI. I was surprised that we didn't see more AI at ISS. It's an area that can help every single stage of the process, from onboarding the orders from the web through to allowing customers to do their own customized design, generative AI design before they submit their job, through intelligent routing of where to send these DTF jobs, pre-flighting, checking the machine is performing correctly, automatic maintenance, automatic order replenishment. All of these things can be helped with AI, which can make things more cost effective, provide a better service, provide a differentiating service. So look out for who is getting on top of the whole AI story and how they're selling it as a way of making you as a PSP more efficient and more productive.
Yeah, I'll echo the AI. Certainly on the generative art side, I was also, like David, I was surprised. I didn't see much generative AI artwork at Impressions Expo. And over the last year, I've been to several international trade shows where that's pretty much all you see on the presses, even screen printing presses, is AI generated artwork. You can tell just by looking at it, it was AI, but I was kind of amazed at that. So, but back to your questions, DTF printers should look for vendor and how they utilize AI, but also how their vendors incorporate things like remote monitoring, right? So if you have a fleet of DTF printers, the vendor is able to dial in, let's say, access via remote access any one of those printers remotely, and diagnose and suggest replacement parts or things like that to help keep the machine up and running. And that's really one aspect that everybody's going to have to be on top of, because the market is so competitive right now. Is you can't afford to be down for even a few hours waiting on a part or waiting on a technician, things like that. So kind of rolled all in with that is user upgradable, user replaceable parts where you don't have to be a rocket science to change a print head. It's very easy. They make it so that, just through reading a short little training manual on how to replace a print head, operators can do that themselves. That not only gets the machine back up and running quicker, but also you don't have to pay a technician to come in and wait for the technician to arrive, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the last thing is just the technical support level from the vendor, right? What is their response time? What is their warranty coverage? What kind of training do they provide? All this stuff is becoming more and more important as this market gets more and more saturated. And really, these are differentiators from the vendor perspective, trying to attract the end users. So the end users should really do their homework and figure out who's going to give them the fastest response time. Where do they have technicians? Is it going to, if I'm in, let's say I'm in the middle of Montana somewhere, is it a 3-day wait? Is it a 1-day wait? What is it? What does the warranty actually cover? You got to read those warranties very carefully, because if you ever read a warranty, it's full of legalese, and they sometimes try to pull one over on you. So you got to be very careful in the warranty. Make sure you follow all the manufacturer recommendations so that you don't void the warranty, right, by putting a third-party ink in the machine or what have you. And then the training and support that they offer. Is it on-site training when the machine is installed? Is it a series of videos they may have on the website where you can only look and not touch? So these are all important factors for the end users as they watch these innovations and features available, and keep their eyes open on when they're making a purchasing decision.
Absolutely. And if anyone's looking for more information on that, we have a How to Find the Best Vendor for You article at DTFprinting.com. We have a lot of education there, but I think that article really goes through all the different questions you should be asking and things that you should be looking into, like Johnny was saying, response time, warranty coverage, training, whether it's on-site, virtual, can you pick up the phone at any time? So those are definitely things to consider. Head over to DTFprinting.com to learn more. Guys, before we move on to workflow and efficiency, anything else that you want to touch on in terms of tech?
I can't think of anything else. I don't know if David has anything.
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of them. I think one other area that is we're going to see more growth in is around color management and how companies try and help people understand that color management isn't this super scary thing that they want to stay away from and just pray that hitting the generic profile button is going to be good enough. Whereas we're seeing a lot more interest in some of the areas of our testing that focus on the color management side of things and how important that can be, especially if you're going after brand type work where you've got to hit Coca-Cola red or you've got to hit Home Depot orange. Being 15 delta E's away from that corporate logo isn't just going to have an upset customer. It's going to end up with the customer not paying your bill. So, people are starting to realize that there is a need to have an understanding of color management, and vendors are going to have to make sure that they build it into the processes and make it as easy as possible. Because you look at a typical RIP and they are pretty damn complicated. They were quite, there was an awful lot of dials that you can tweak, and you can get yourself into a real mess if you don't know what you're doing. So I think we'll probably see more simplified, wizard-driven color management capabilities built into these RIPs to appeal to people who maybe aren't color specialists, but they want to be able to do more than just hit the generic button, hit the green button, and hope for the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Color management is definitely a challenge that a lot of printers are facing, especially if they're new to DTF. Yes, the benefit is having higher color counts, but then you're really focusing, on that color management. And I know that even some printers are like, well, I'm screen printing on the front left chest, but I'm DTF printing onto the sleeve, and the colors need to match. How am I going to do that? And I never say this name right. The spectrometer or
spectrometer. Yeah.
The color management tool that I think everyone should have, really, to be making sure those colors are accurate.
And you could be wasting money. And if the film you're working with has got an ink limit of 80%, and your profile is dumping 90% of ink down, all you're doing is wasting 10% of ink and potentially making worse looking output. So you could be saving you money at the same time. There's no point in oversaturating a film if it's not going to give you any additional benefit.
Right. Okay, so on to workflow and efficiency, which is always important. How can DTF printers improve this to meet the growing demand for these high quality prints that we're talking about?
Well, I think first and foremost, you got to invest in high throughput DTF printers. Faster is better always. So buy what you can afford at the fastest speed and highest quality that you can afford. Optimize the curing and powder application. That's something I think that's still quite a bit of a mystery to all end users to some degree. And not only that, but also the additional layer to all that is constantly changing powders and films and trying to work out the wrinkles in the piece of fabric, and you're constantly changing. So you're just chasing your tail. So stick with one system until you are stable, and then evaluate. And then if you need to make change, make the changes off in the side. Do some testing first to make sure things are going to work before you implement it into the actual production workflow. You want to make sure that if you change powders, you want to make sure the washability is good. The amount of powder on the transfer is good. And all these things have to be tested. Same with the curing or, even changing films, right? Some films are coated differently. Some films are thicker. Some films are thinner. Some have better thermal stability than others. And so all these things you have to really think just beyond the surface. You have to really dig down and evaluate all these variables that are at play with DTF printing. It's almost like screen printing, right? So you have all these things that are trying to work together. And if there's one component in the workflow that is causing the problem, you want to identify that as quickly as possible and make the change as quickly as possible too. But first do the testing to make sure that that's actually what it is. And then the last thing is just try to standardize the whole workflow, the artwork prep, the RIP settings, all the software settings, the nesting in the RIP so that you conserve materials. All these things kind of add up to cost savings. And just with the competitiveness in the market right now, cost savings is a check in the right column for the print service providers.
And I'd also add plan for the worst. Because there's everyone's heard horror stories about a batch of film being bad, and if you're in the middle of a big job and half your job is on the batch of film that's working really well, and then halfway through it you have to switch to your new batch and everything suddenly goes downhill quickly. Give yourself a backup. You can't necessarily rely upon every single batch to be successful, so make sure you've got some backup films that work. Maybe the same thing with the inks, the same thing with the powders. So prepare for the worst, and then if the worst happens, you've got a redundancy plan in place.
Yeah, I think a lot of I know at least a year or so ago there were a lot of shops that just had an extra, extra DTF printer lying around just like in case of the worst happening. And I think, Johnny, what you said, test. This is not just a plug and play situation. You really have to test so much of your consumables, and there's a lot that goes into this. So yeah, really great feedback. And you mentioned,
I think another thing that's going to be interesting is, we're all talking about machines getting faster and faster and faster. And there's going to be that balancing act between, are people just going to keep buying one machine that's getting quicker and quicker and quicker and putting all your eggs in one basket? Or are you going to go down the route of having maybe two machines that can print 15, 20 square meters per hour, rather than just one machine that can print 40? Because if your one machine that prints 40 goes down, if you blow ahead and the service engineer can't get to you for 2 days, you've now got 2 days of no activity at all. Whereas if you blow ahead on one of your 20 square meter per hour machines, you've still got 50% bandwidth to work with. So it's going to be interesting to see how many people just go down the route of having, faster machines versus the option of going for more machines that allow you to have that level of redundancy in play as well.
Right. You mentioned some AI generative art. You were expecting to see more of that impressions. You didn't, but what are other best practices for streamlining the production process? Because I think that's definitely one of them. And I don't think it's an end all be all. I think there's a lot that you still need to tweak and figure out, and the designer comes in for that. But any other best practices?
Well, I'll just kind of bounce off what we were just talking about. Have backup vendors, right? We all experienced supply chain instability throughout the pandemic and even post-pandemic, and we don't want that to happen again. So it's always good to have some backups arranged. Maybe have enough film on the shelf to get you through just in case there's a supply chain disruption. Have a backup vendor for inks that you've tested, made sure that it's close to your main ink supplier. So that if the main ink supplier for some reason has a disruption in the supply chain, or they can't get the ink for some reason, you have a backup in place. That way, just like having the extra printer redundancy, you want to have redundancy in your supply chain so that just in case, right? Always prepare for the worst. Like David said, just in case something goes bad, you've got a backup in place that you don't have to shut down production for however long, right? But in terms of, in terms of streamlining production, I think that generative art is going to be one of the key things, but also AI in general, with e-com and shipping, right? Empower AI tools to help with everything from, if you have an online e-commerce site, having AI suggest potential designs for the visitors to your site, right? And it's very quick and easy. AI does a great job with that. We've all been to Google. Oh, you like this? Well, you may also be interested in this, this, and this, right? It's the technology is already out there, so it's just a matter of getting that that programming wrapped up into your e-store, and AI is a great way to do that. I mentioned, RIP processing, optimizing the workflow there for not only quality prints, but also David mentioned total ink limit. You don't ever want to jet more ink than is required. And that's really one of the key factors involved with color managed workflow is you pull that ink limit down to where it's just giving you enough ink so that the blacks are black, the yellows are bright yellow, and the greens are bright greens and things, but you don't want too much ink because anything past a certain point, it's just money down the drain. So pulling those ink limits in to where they need to be, and that's what color management does, is a great efficiency and cost savings, right, for production.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned a couple of tools there. Any other key software tools or automation solutions that you would recommend to those in the DTF space?
I mean, print on demand workflow. I mentioned, e-commerce all the way through shipping. So there's software packages out there that enable you to have a complete oversight and control over the entire workflow, and print on demand workflow software is a way to do that. It not only integrates with your e-commerce, your API, your application programming interface, application protocol interface, and that's really where the e-com store talks with the production scheduling software and make sure that everything is matched up per the customer specifications, so that we've all seen the barcodes and the QR codes in use and digital workflows. It's the same with DTF printing, and it's getting even better. But that workflow software handles everything, even down to the shipping department, where it auto-generates the label. There's checklists in place to make sure that the contents in the order are present. They are QC passed. Everything that should be in the package is in the package. And then only then you seal it up and put the shipping label on. And so that way it just guarantees no errors or reduced errors. I won't say no errors. There's always errors, but a reduced number of errors. Everything, all the wrinkles are ironed out. Automate as much as you can. And software, again, is a great way to do that. But it just is a way to streamline the workflow so that you're not sitting there scratching your head going, now, is this supposed to be on a red shirt or a blue shirt? I don't know. Go over and check the paperwork and make sure that it's on a blue shirt, not a red shirt, right? Or vice versa, whatever. So that's what the software does. It just instantaneously gives you the correct information at the time that it's needed throughout the workflow so that you don't have to hunt it down.
Maybe try and get an opportunity to go and visit somebody who's utilizing it well. I get invites all the time to go and see factories or people who are adopting automation. Whether it could be a low level, it could be a very high level. I went to Japan last year and saw a huge factory that deals with a lot of processing of very large blue chip companies, and they have got the most amazing workflow system. It's everything from taking your orders straight off the processing system, directing the jobs to the right position in the factory to process it most efficiently, sending them straight over to the packing department, which the packing department depends on whether it's a single T-shirt. If it's a single T-shirt, it's being sent over to the single T-shirt line, where it then gets automatically folded, put into a jiffy bag, label gets automatically put on top, and it goes down through Japanese post, which is the cheapest way of sending it out. If it's a 3, 4, 5 T-shirt or it's got a hoodie, then it goes into the separate processing area where it's now going to go out for a courier. So those kind of things it's just so slick. So, and I'm sure that a lot of people, because there aren't that many companies doing it yet, if you can go to an automation manufacturer or software company and say, I'd like to see it in action. Can you recommend something I could go and see? You'll probably find they'll be able to say yes. And, people like to be able to boast about, look at the automation I've got, I'm ahead of the curve. So, you'll probably learn an awful lot by actually seeing it working in the real world.
Yeah, that's amazing. And just obviously so helpful. So I used to say this with a wide format space. If you can't, print it, you can wrap it, meaning just that the possibilities seem to be endless in terms of market segments. And I kind of feel the same way with DTF. I just feel like the possibilities are really endless as to what you can do and the spaces that you can be in. So from your perspective, which market segment should DTF printers target, for the most growth and profitability this year that you're seeing?
I mean, there's a lot of different market segments that DTF printers can target. Small and mid-sized apparel brands. There's an increasing demand for on-demand and customized apparel from these apparel brands. They're looking for lower production costs. And so DTF is a great alternative to DTG or even screen printing. Promotional and corporate apparel, right? So corporations, event organizers, they need low cost, high quality branding solutions for their events and activities, if you will. And the ability of DTF to print everything from logos with gradients to fine detail artwork makes it a more attractive solution than, say, vinyl transfer, heat transfer vinyl, or screen printing for short runs. Customized accessories and hard goods, right? So while DTF is expanding beyond apparel, right? So we've seen leather with DTF and things like that, bags, hats, shoes, all these kind of items. UV DTF is also gaining traction for things like stickers and labels and hard surface applications. So with that comes the ability to package products for your customers, right? So, oh, you need some shirts? Great. Hey, how would you like some stickers or would you like some phone cases decorated with your event logo or something like that as giveaways, things like that. And so these two, again, tools in the toolbox, we're seeing a lot of end users adopt not only DTF, but they're also adopting UV DTF so they can expand their product offerings and offer these package arrangements, right? So you can get, water containers or water bottles, things like that with your shirts or all these different things that you can decorate.
Yeah, absolutely. David, I know we lost you there for just a second. We're talking about different market segments and if there are any emerging verticals with apparel that you're seeing specific to DTF, whether that's, small businesses or custom brands, and just different market segments that DTF printers can offer to their customers and maybe consider getting into this year.
Yeah, one of the interesting things I saw at the Leon show last week was somebody demonstrating their ability to print Braille using UV DTF onto film and then transferring it over, not onto the film, directly onto the object. It was the same technology, but it was a UV DTF machine that could be print directly onto object or printing onto film. And then having the additional adhesive layer, laminate layer added afterwards. So that was an interesting way of now providing two different technologies under the hood of one machine, which is, again, going back to the Etsy business where you're looking to give yourself as wide a range of deliverable opportunities as you can within that small limited footprint that you may have in your office or your garage. That was another pretty cool way of adding extra capability. So that was quite interesting.
Right. Yeah. One of our attendees, Ian Stoddern, asked, are you covering DTF or UV DTF? And is there a crossover? Is it similar? And of course, the technology is not the same. We actually have some videos and some articles at DTFprinting.com that really dig into the differences and you can better understand the technology. But as you were saying, David, that is an addition and promo products are so huge.
We're actually building out a UV DTF testing program at the moment. So one of the things I was doing at ISS was grabbing as many UV DTF samples as I can so we could start experimenting in the lab, looking at different tests that differentiate UV DTF output, whether it's scratch resistance, chemical rub resistance, resistance to being put in dishwashers or, other household appliances that may cause damage to them. So looking at all sorts of things around that. So we'll be looking to launch a UV DTF testing program later this year. I think probably Q3, maybe early Q4.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I hear really great things about DTF. Of course, I'm not as well versed in that space, but I know printers who use it. They're just so thrilled with it. Although I was with an exhibitor at Impressions Long Beach, and they're like, well, you can't touch it for 24 hours and you can't put it in the dishwasher. And you can't. And I'm like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do with it now? I got to carry it around, like this all day. That's not going to work. But I know that those advancements will be coming, and I'm excited to see them for sure.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about the race to the bottom, and pricing is always such a tough one. I think there's so many different factors that go into this, depending on where you are, what your customer base is, etc. But from your perspective, are there factors that DTF printers should consider when determining DTF pricing, especially as it is so new and a lot of are offering screen printing? Do you price it higher? Do you price it lower? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it certainly takes a different cost structure. With screen printing, the higher the volume, the cheaper the per print cost. With digital, it's not, it costs me the same to print one as it does to print 100. And so volume discounting is not really that applicable in the digital workflow. So you really have to do a cost analysis and understand the true cost of production. And then also where you are in your local or regional market and what is your competitor pricing. And then your pricing has to kind of take all that into consideration. So think about upselling opportunities, right? Custom artwork design fees or express turnaround fees, or some of the specialty film that is available, an upcharge, charging an upcharge for that. Yeah. An application services fee, where if your customer typically is just buying heat transfers from you, but now they want you to actually transfer them to blank garments, charge a fee for that. So all this stuff kind of, again, rolls into the pricing model, but competing with some of these production printers or avoiding the race to the bottom, offering premium products that, and I'll echo David again, that differentiate your business is the way to stay ahead. It is a race to the bottom now, not only on the end user side, but also on the vendor side, where a lot of the Chinese inks that are available now are dirt cheap. Do they work? How is their color? So you have to take all that into consideration. So really capitalize on the need of the consumer, your customer, for their unique needs as an individual or as a company, right? I was telling David the other day, I saw a great video where this lady was in a jewelry store and there were a pair of earrings, in the glass case, and the customer was asking the store owner, I guess, how much they were, and the store owner was like, "Oh no, those are not for sale. They have a long historical family heritage in my family, this and that. They're not for sale." And the lady starts offering money for it, $10,000, $50,000, $500,000. Finally, the store owner goes, "Okay, I'll sell it to you for $500,000." And the customer leaves thinking she just bought something so special. And as soon as the door closes, the jewelry store owner opens another drawer with the same identical set of earrings, and she pulls out another single pair and puts them in the glass case. That's kind of the approach with, you have to make your customer feel like, I have to have this. I have to have it, right? What do you want for it? And if you put your company in that position, you're going to be able to capitalize on the need of the customer, making them feel that they have something that nobody else does.
I like that story, except for the lying part. No. What a fib, a giant fib. No, I totally get what you're saying. That is very interesting. And I think that is important to show, that value to your customer. David, do you have anything else to say about pricing, and so people can still stay competitive in this new space?
Yeah, I mean, again, the drive towards the bottom is going to be more focused around the engines, throwing CMYK output out there. So, get an understanding of how much more value or how much more people will spend on something that goes beyond CMYK. We've seen it in the production cut sheet market when they first started going from 4-station CMYK digital presses to 5 and 6. And, you now have the ability to add gold embellishment or additional spot colors or neons or whites or clear varnishes and things. And we did a large survey a couple of years ago asking end users, how much more would you pay to have, gold embellishment or, three-dimensional gloss detailing on your wedding invitation or your marketing flyer? And the common pattern was the end user was indicating to us that they would be prepared to spend more money on those than and we asked the same question of the PSP, saying, do you have the capability to add gold foil? And do you have the ability to add, three-dimensional glossing? And we would ask them, how much more do you charge for that? And the common pattern was the end users were prepared to spend more money than the PSPs thought they could charge for it. So if you've invested in a machine that has neon or you found a really good gold foil DTF supplier, make sure you have a good understanding of how much more people will pay to have that. How much more would you pay to have that unicorn on your little girl's t-shirt, which has got glittery patterning all over it rather than just a flat image on a white t-shirt? Would you pay $5 more to have your little girl walk around in, a glittery unicorn because she'll love it more, or
right.
Your little boy who wants a little glittery unicorn, it's up to you. But it's those kind of things. Make sure you know what you're worth, and don't go down the route of trying to compete with the guy who's got the 8 head CMYK machine down the road. Think what he can't offer. Right. What can you offer because you've got that extra creative capability, and you're prepared to put a bit more effort into making sure that the end deliverable is going to put a smile on somebody's face rather than just, save them a couple of quid or bucks.
Yeah.
So
I think it's also figuring out who your customer is or who you want your customer to be. If you keep trying to push these premium effects and finishes to your local football team and they're like, we don't want this. Okay. Right. Then that's not it.
But don't be afraid to say no. I mean, if you fill up your bandwidth in your print shop with work that makes you 5% profit margin, what's the point? Mm-hmm. Why bother getting out of bed? Focus on, maybe take less work, but focus on the work that's going to make you 40, 50, 60% profit margin. And just build on that, because word will get around. Where do you get that t-shirt from? I got it from the guy down the road. It's more expensive than buying it from Walmart or another supplier, but my God, it's really good. It looks really cool. I've had it. It's been for the wash like 50 times, and it still looks as good as it was the day we bought it. Word of mouth will get out.
Right. Yeah, but if your customers are luxury, high fashion, high performance, then it's like, okay, we'll offer it to them because they probably have the money to spend and they're looking for that quality product. So being able to figure that out and have those options, it's huge.
Yeah. Interviewing your customer when you first meet them is very important to try to understand who they are and understand what they need so that you can provide them with exactly what they need, whether that's a name and number on their shirt, or if it's a high-end fashion item that they're looking for, and then you can adjust the pricing accordingly, right?
Right. And looking into 2025, are there any challenges or future considerations, whether that's, potential supply chain issues or anything that DTF printers, should be doing today to ensure long-term success and stay ahead of the curve?
I touched on this earlier, but try to diversify your suppliers and build strong relationships. Identify at least 2, maybe 3 alternative suppliers for DTF films, inks, powders. equipment parts, things like that. And so that just in case there's some kind of disruption, you have a alternative that you can go to keep things up and running in production. Oftentimes in certain regions of the U.S., I know you have many different suppliers. So monitor those suppliers and try to reduce your dependence on overseas shipping delays, right? And by establishing a relationship with your regional suppliers, you can then kind of keep your finger on the pulse as to what's going on with their supply chain and make the necessary adjustments in your supply chain to counteract that, to stay ahead. Another thing I would consider is try to purchase in bulk. You know, not only do you get often you get discounts, but you have inventory stability in case something happens to, let's say, the power grid, or gas prices rise and it's going to cost you 3 times as much for shipping or something like that. You just never know, certainly in today's environment, what's going to happen tomorrow. So always be prepared as best you can. And then always, I think it's a good idea. You don't have to be a stock market exchange guru, but keep an eye on raw material prices, right? Because anytime raw material prices rise, then so too will your consumable prices that you're ordering. So powders or inks, if there's a raw material price increase for, say, cyan pigment, guess what? Your cyan ink is going to have a price increase whether you want it or not. So just by monitoring these changes 2 and 3 stages upstream from where you sit, you can better prepare so that when these increases finally do come to you, maybe you've developed a backup plan, you found an alternative supplier, or you can at least prepare for those increases by raising your prices in advance so that you build a bit of a cash flow and you're able to absorb those price increases once they do hit.
Right. Yeah, great feedback, Johnny. Kind of keep your eye out on those things because they're all different factors that lead into your business and how you're pricing and what you're buying. David, any final thoughts on challenges, what people should really be considering this year before we move on to the questions and some fun news from us?
No, I mean, based on what we're getting more and more requests from the testing perspective side. It's really focusing on making sure you know how good your suppliers are, and it's that whole holistic view of what DTF is. As I said, we're getting more requests for can you test and help us differentiate our inks or our films or our powders or our oven curing stations. So I think that's going to become the new battleground, more so than maybe the printers themselves. I think it's a case of, we're getting phone calls all the time from engine manufacturers saying, do you know who I can contact at Epson? Because they've come out with a machine. We'd love to try and get in front of them to pitch why our powder curing station is a great fit, because they obviously don't have their own system. So they're relying upon their channel partners to offer up a solution. So, it's becoming a very, very expansive market with more and more players looking to play nice with as many people as possible.
Sure. And David, you mentioned the UV testing program or UV DTF testing program that will be coming out. Can you talk about Keypoint Intelligence's DTF testing program and how our listeners can get involved?
Yeah. So our DTF testing program is focused on 4 key areas. So we evaluate the machines looking at their productivity. We look at their ink consumption using standardized document or standardized image. So you can actually look at one machine and see how much CMYK white ink it's consumed. And then you can pick up another machine and you can see how much CMYK it's consumed. And that is actually relevant because they're actually information on the same image. You go around trade shows and you'll see people quoting, say, $5 to print this T-shirt or $4 to print this T-shirt, but they're different images. So it's a bit of a waste of time trying to compare when you're actually looking at the same output. We also assess image quality. We look at that across color gamut, spot color management, different types of halftone imagery. And we also do a big wash test. So when we're looking at washing, we're conducting it using a standardized t-shirt. So everybody's machines are printed using a Next Level 3600 cotton tee, which they were all provided to me by Next Level as one massive batch out of one factory in one manufacturing process. So it's important when we're doing testing that we're not introducing variables other than the machine we're testing when we go from one vendor to another vendor. The whole idea of what we do is allowing you to pick up a report on a Roland or a Mamaki or an Enjoy Print or Epson and know that the data you're seeing is only different because of the machine's performance, not due to factors we're introducing. So our wash test is all done on a standardized garment. It's all done in our UK lab using standardized washing equipment, standardized tumble drying equipment, standardized water, standardized detergent. So again, nothing is changing. And when we do our wash test, it's all done at 40 degrees with an 800 RPM cycle. And then it's put into a tumble dry with a heat pump system. So it's got the ability to be less strenuous on the garments themselves, and it's got a humidity sensor in the chamber, so it picks up on when the chamber's got down to a certain humidity. And we stop the tumble dry process and what they classify as hang dry. So it's not bone dry, but you could put straight into your drawer and shut it. It's designed to then go into a hanger and then the last 5-10% worth of humidity just breathe out. So we do that, and we do over 20 cycles. And then we look at color gamut shrinkage. We look at degradation of fine detailing, degradation of halftone imagery, and importantly, we look at things like stretch test resistance. So all of that data goes into our standardized test report, and we go to you. So we don't have you send the DTF equipment into us because it's a very expensive process for you to ship the equipment. There's also a lot to learn about the machines themselves. So we like to have the expert operator with us, working with us while we're doing the testing. We send out the garments in advance so you can make sure that you've got the optimized heat press settings for that garment. And then we'll spend a couple of days with you at your facility, running through the tests. And then we actually provide you with a draft copy of all the data before it gets published, just in case the machine has had a bad day at the office and has done something really weird. The last thing we want to do is publish a report that maybe puts your machine in a bad light when it shouldn't be. And if it means we have to come back and do it again because something went a bit wonky, we'll come back and do it, because it's more important for us to make sure we're representing everybody's product to the best of its ability, rather than getting a quick fix rush out of having said one machine's done a really bad job or something, when maybe it wasn't that machine, maybe it's the operator, maybe it was us reporting incorrectly, maybe it's just the machine having a bad day. So we'll always make sure that we put the machine, through its paces, but we'll always make sure that we're fair and objective about everything.
Fantastic. I love it. Kind of reminded me a little bit of the DTF Printing t-shirt contest that we do. We send everyone the same UX print blank t-shirt. Of course, they're using, whatever they have in-house, but at least that blank apparel is the same for every single person. And our judges can really test the differences there, which, by the way, we are running the contest right now. A little plug. You can sign up by February 28th. We'll send you the design, the print. We'll need those back the end of March, and we'll share the results at DTF Expo like we did last year. But yeah, thank you, David, for sharing all of that. Can you let our listeners know how they can get involved in the program?
Yeah, sure. They can email me, and I'll happily get on a call, walk you through the entire process, and then we'll see what the most efficient way of getting to you, whether it's in your European facility, American facility, Asian facility. We've traveled all over the place. So I was in Europe a few weeks ago testing. I'm in China next week. A couple of weeks after that, I'll be in America testing. And then a couple of weeks after that, I'll be in Japan testing. So we go where the machines are.
Awesome. Well, I hope that our listeners take advantage of that opportunity, and thank you for Keypoint for doing that. It'll definitely advance the industry. We're going to get into some questions. Thank you all for being here. I know we're a little bit over time, but this information I think is so full of value, and we're learning so much. So again, thank you, David and Johnny. We have a question from Paul Ewing. Given the very high growth of DTF, any view on how the M2 printed by DTF compare with DTG in 2025?
I mean, so in terms of print volume, it's hard to distinguish between square meters per hour or square meters versus units in the DTG world. But at this point, I would say DTG is still higher in terms of print volume versus DTF. Although DTF is growing very fast, and so it wouldn't surprise me that it may possibly even this year, the amount of printing in each technology will be relatively close.
Okay, great. Sebastian Hansen's from Caldera is asking, we talk about high growth, but is there any idea about how many print shops are doing DTF? Well, Sebastian, great question. We were going to talk about this a little bit later. DTF Printing and Keypoint Intelligence have partnered for the DTF State of the Industry Survey. We actually announced this yesterday. If you're a subscriber to our newsletter or our social media channels, you probably saw this information already. But Johnny and his team have really created an amazing survey for the industry. So we're asking, we're going to find out these types of questions and hopefully get more data from print shops, across, especially the country. Johnny, any addition to that?
Yeah, so the DTF State of the Industry Survey really dives into how companies are using DTF, what percentage of their production is DTF, some of the pain points that they are experiencing with DTF. What do they wish DTF did that it currently doesn't do? So it's a very thorough survey, although it should only take 15 minutes or so to complete. So it's not very time consuming. But I will be rolling some of the data that we collect from that survey into my talk at DTF Expo coming up April 1st and 2nd. So I'm excited about that. So yeah, take the survey. We'd love to have your responses.
And if you take the survey now, I believe until March 14th, you will be entered to win a free ticket to DTF Expo. We're giving out 25 of those. So make sure you take that. And also, if you want to register for the Expo in general, you can head to DTFexpo.com. We also have amazing workshops happening the day before. So a lot going on there, and I can talk a little bit about that later, but definitely take the survey. It will really help our industry understand better, we talk about workflow efficiency, everything, pretty much everything that we talked about, in this, or people buying equipment, what they're looking for. Right. It's going to be a great survey for you to take, and then for us to share the results, not only at DTF Expo, but also via DTF Printing. Richard Gerard said, for under 30K, what setup are you buying? David, Johnny, do you have any suggestions there? I personally can't share, specifics, but I think you can.
What am I buying? I'm buying reliability, tech support, and quality. That's what I'm buying. And there are many brands out there. I won't go into who, try to rank them or anything like that. But there are numerous vendors and brands that offer sub $30,000 solutions that give you reliability, quality, the necessary tech support to stay up and running, and at a decent price. So
great. Yeah. And what I've heard from a lot of people actually is do not buy you shouldn't really buying cheap anything, but do not buy a heat transfer machine, like a heat press. Sorry. Yeah. Do not buy a cheap heat press. Yeah. Because that is really going to get you into trouble. Like, you may see them online and think, oh my gosh, that's so cheap. It's going to bite you in the butt later. So spend the money there. For sure. Adrienne Valles, I'm not sure how to pronounce Valles, last name. Have you tried Neostampa Delta Rip?
Yeah, I think that's an Enedit software rip, if I am not mistaken. Enedit is very good in their rip, and Neostampa is a widely used rip software in the DTF market and in the digital textile market as well. So I haven't tried it personally, but I know many who use the Neo Stamper RIP and have nothing but good things to say.
Perfect. Kevin's asking, what are the major differences currently between PET film and paper transfer and DTF? Johnny, you brought this up in the beginning of the webinar.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the biggest difference is you can recycle the paper, right? You can recycle PET. They make things like lanyards for trade shows out of recycled PET. The problem is it's much more cost effective to recycle paper than it is plastic. Paper can be recycled numerous times, whereas plastic, after only a few times of recycling, it can't be recycled anymore. So, but those are some of the major differences. The biggest thing with the paper, there's one vendor out of Germany, Felix Schuler. They have, I think it's 60% recycled content already in the paper. And in terms of the plastics that are used in the coatings, it's about 40 to 50% less plastic than the PET version of the same media, essentially. So it's a step in the right direction in terms of sustainability, and it just it's a better alternative than generating more plastic waste, which we don't need.
Yeah, and we're actually going to be running a paper-based DTF film test later in the year, like a group test, to see how well some of them all perform. So keep your eyes out. We just, we're just putting together the plan for what to do with that at the moment.
Perfect. And our last question, and again, this is a great way if you don't want to Stephanie's question ends up with asking, what printer would you recommend, because she wants to bring DTF in-house, but you don't always have to bring equipment in-house. You can outsource transfers and heat press them in-house, or outsource the entire process. We have some information on all three at DTFprinting.com, but she's saying we currently outsource our DTF printing. We get it in less than 24 hours. We press it in-house on garments, but she's interested in having a small backup printer in-house. Anything that you would recommend, or more blanket answer of, go through the reliability, value testing, etc.?
I mean, I think it's a great plan to have a backup, and perhaps even ultimately not have to use that third-party vendor anymore for your DTF transfers. I would start with something small, inexpensive, but reliable. So some of the things that immediately come to mind would be Epson has that 1070 that they announced last year in Long Beach. That is not only a DTF, but also DTG printer. So you can do both cut sheet DTF transfers on that printer, as well as print directly to the garment. The brother machine is nice, the GTX Pro, that has the DTF roll-to-roll attachment. That may be a little bit more expensive, let's say, than the Epson 1070, but still, a certainly reliable machine. And so that may be something of interest to you to bring that in-house. I'm trying to think of a third alternative. Roland's, the BY20, is that right, David? The BY20 announced last year. That's a nice little tabletop DTF printer. You still have
the Azon Pronto series, another nice little desktop system. You've got the option of having it as a CMYK device. We tested it a few months ago in our lab. But you can also have it as a neon magenta, neon yellow device as well. So, and you haven't got to go creating fancy additional layered artwork. You simply send your image down, and then it automatically reproduces anything that's got the cyan or the yellow, the magenta or the yellow elements using the neon inks, and you can create some really cool creative options, and you can switch from one to the other. It's not a quick process to switch your machine from the CMYK ink to the neons, but you can do it. So again, if it's a backup measure, or you just want to be doing a promotional series where you want neon, maybe it's coming out to Halloween time and you want to produce all sorts of crazy glow in the dark pumpkin type t-shirts as a design, then you could switch the machine over to the neon version, get your promotional range out, and then switch it back to your CMYK. So So that's a nice little piece of kit that we've seen recently.
I think, Stephanie, you're going to learn a lot by bringing that in-house. I think you're either going to decide I want to keep ordering transfers, or you may go all in with buying DTF equipment. Yeah. You have to keep us posted on that. I'm interested to hear, how that goes for you, for sure. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining the webinar. Thank you, Johnny and David, for sharing so much information. The recorded version of the webinar will be available next week at DTFprinting.com. I urge you to subscribe to our newsletter so you can access the video and all of our other content I mentioned. As we said, we partnered with Keypoint Intelligence for the DTF Printing State of the Industry Survey. The survey is live. 25 of you will win tickets to the DTF Expo in Mesa, Arizona, April 1st through 2nd. You just need to take the survey by March 14th. I hope I see you all at DTF Expo. I know, Johnny, I'll see you. David, I'm not so sure, but you can register at dtfexpo.com right now for $35. This price does go up on February 28th. As we mentioned, Johnny will be leading a session at the Expo titled Market Trends and Consumer Preferences and DTF Transfers, where he will share some of the insights from the survey, and you really don't want to miss that. Guys, that's all I have. Take the survey, register for DTF Expo, subscribe to the DTF Printing newsletter, engage with Keypoint Intelligence and their testing program, and good luck growing your DTF print business. We are here for you along the ride. Any final thoughts, guys?
Well, it's been great being here, Adrienne. Good to see you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yep.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.